Hi everyone, we're just waiting for Anand to join. Finally.
Oh my God. You can see me now.
Yes, I can. I can see you and hear you.
Thank God for that. My first entry into Insta has not been so fun, but hopefully.
Yeah, I have done this so many times and I still don't get it right. I mean, so at least yours, you have an excuse. It's your first time. I think I have no such excuse. Anyway, I mean, let's begin. I can see a lot of people have already joined. So hi everyone, welcome to this IG Live with Anand Rajan from Apurva.ai and me Smarinita Shetty from IDR. And this one is going to be a little different from the other IG Lives that we've done, where it's not like an interview, but it's more chat between Anand and me because both our teams have built this IDR Answers, the IDR team as well as the Apurva.ai teams. And we wanted to talk a little bit about it because it's the first of its kind in the world. It's going to kind of, it presents a platform where we can answer questions about social impact, where it goes from just being a knowledge-seeking platform to like a sense-making platform to then hopefully a problem-solving platform. Let me give a little bit of intro, Anand, about IDEA, and then maybe you can speak a little bit about Apurva, and then we can get the conversation going. So I think many of you all who follow IDR know us. We are Asia's largest media platform on the sector. I'm the CEO and co-founder, one of the co-founders at IDR. And I think at IDR, our entire belief is that, everyone must have an opportunity to contribute to the knowledge that they possess. And simultaneously, this deep and diverse knowledge that exists, it must be accessible to everyone, right? So in a sense, what we're trying to do is create this level playing field when it comes to knowledge, because we firmly believe that, having knowledge is power. And then what you do with it, having it, the right information at the right time can actually create, long-term and significant change. And we've been around for 7 years. In those 7 years, we've had 1,500, people write on ITR, contribute to us. They've come from a range of places. They've been heads of nonprofits, funders, philanthropists. They've been teams at the front lines. They've been the communities themselves. And they've written across a bunch of themes, right? So from mental health to education, to livelihoods, gender. So in a sense, over the years, we've built this collective wisdom of the sector in a sense that sits on IDR, right? I think what the challenge has been for us is saying, how do we make this knowledge from just being knowledge for knowledge sake to actionable? And I think that's where, the Apurva team came in, and that's how we built IDR Answers. Anand, you want to speak a little bit about Apurva so that, people get a sense of what is Apurva, right? We keep saying powered by Apurva, but what is it and, what does it do?
Yeah. So thank you, Smarinita. And firstly, congratulations on your go live. This is such an amazing first step. Very excited for you and your ecosystem. So Apurva is a digital public infrastructure, which was envisioned, which is really about unlocking the collective wisdom of ecosystems. It is a public good. All of what we do as part of organization Apurva is Creative Commons or MIT licensed, which means that it is really about putting out safe, inclusive software, which the people in this ecosystem, the development ecosystem in particular, can use. So super excited. We are in Bangalore. So we've been in this journey of trying to build this for 2 years. Prior to that, I was part of this sector trying to really understand how problems can be solved, especially complex problems, and how do you look at, say, exponential technologies and scale thinking to address these problems. So super excited.
I mean, we are thrilled as well. We're also thrilled to have a partner who understands technology, better than we do. So, we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. And I think we'll come to some of that later, right? But maybe I can give our audience a little bit of what IDR Answers is.
Yeah.
So maybe I can start and you can just kind of add to it, right? So IDR Answers is basically, like we said, it's the first AI search and analysis engine that can answer any questions that you have around social impact. The interesting thing is that it draws upon IDR's knowledge base, which is more than 2,500 articles now over the last 7 years, which means that it draws on articles which are fact-checked, because every IDR article is fact-checked, it is cited, it is attributed to people, to organizations, very verifiable. And I think that's the key for it. But the reason we decided to build IDR Answers was also because I think what we realized is when we built this huge repository of knowledge, there were two things we struggled with, right? So how can people find, when you have 2,500 articles, how do you find anything, right? So the thing was, how do you find information and act on it and use it for problem solving, right? Right now, I think all of y'all who do use IDR, it's like you spend a lot of time searching for it. So your mental faculties, all your energy goes in searching for it. And then you have to spend more time connecting the dots, making sense of it, right? So our idea was, how do we reduce this friction and move from just a search for information mode to like make sense of the information, and then hopefully to a solve mode, right? So that's the objective with IDR Answers. Like, how do we take away the burden of searching, making sense, and cut off those layers and just like answer the questions that you have so that you can move to acting on it. And I think the second thing that we struggled with IDR in its current form was, how do we understand what people want to learn about, right? Right now, we have our teams, they go out into the fields, we speak to a bunch of people, at the front lines as leaders, as, people working in the sector. And then they tell us, oh, we would like to know more about capacity building or around communications, or we want to understand what our peers are doing in agriculture in Odisha. But it's a very analogous process, right? It's bottlenecked by our team going out and meeting people. Here, when you ask questions and idea, for the problems you're trying to solve, we get a sense of these are what you're looking for, and these are the gaps that we may or may not be addressing, right? So it actually informs us or what the sector at large wants to learn about. And I think that's valuable, because then we can find people and organizations who can like address those needs, right? So that was the thinking. Anand, you worked with us for a while now. Like it's been,
Yeah.
7 months, and we've had conversations for a year. Have you seen other things that you think, IDR Answers can fill like the gap for?
No, absolutely. I think you touched on a very important point, which is problem solving, right? So on one end, there is a need to search and find the responses, but then what do we do with this? So how do I create actionable insights? How do I solve problems? And the way we've looked at this, Smarinita, and I think it fits, I think you started this conversation by saying that we have collective wisdom. How do you make this available at scale, right? That's the problem you're trying to solve. And we said, if we really have to solve this problem, there are two things. One is the ability to synthesize broadly and then go deeply. So we look at Apurva as a T. So there is a breadth of offerings and there is a depth of offerings. And why do we need this? Because many times we either have the ability to go deep or go wide. Systems thinking helps us go wide, but then you don't have the tools to go deep. So how do I bring both of these together? And we believe that the true value is at the intersection of this T, where the innovations or audacious possibilities exist. And how do you offer this at scale with greater speed and in context to the users, in the context of the needs of the users, is really the problem we try to solve. So I think that's really the offer of IDR Answers to your community. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, we're hoping people, use it and see that value, right? And I think, again, that'll be like, feedback for us on what works, what doesn't.
And sorry, I was just going to say, the usage is also, it is a behavioral shift. So we have to work with this ecosystem because this is a new way of thinking. It's a new way of solving.
Correct.
And people have, I believe most of them have seen ChatGPT. So that's a space where people are. And I think I'm happy if you think that will be useful. Maybe talk a little about why we are thinking this way. Do you think that will help your audience?
Yeah. Because I've had a lot of people, when I've gone and told people that this is what we're doing, they're like, what is the point of doing this? Why don't we just use ChatGPT, right? why are
sure.
you working with Apurva, and why are you running it on this engine? So yeah, please,
So,
from the tech person's
yeah,
mouth.
yeah. Part is I understand tech pretty well, but I'm more obsessed with the problem. So if there's a way to leverage tech and not build another tech, I think that's really what I would love to do. And we said from day one that we are not in this business of building one more AI. That was the hypothesis we started with. But then when we looked at the problem itself, I think the problem was when we looked at this AI space, we found that most of the AI, including say a chat GPT, is very centralized, and if I may even call it authoritative, right? So it's built by someone in some part of the world, and the expectation is it can be deployed in some other part of the world. Now it works beautifully well for say a chat experience. Right? So we felt that is not the space we are in. We are looking at complex interconnected problems where if we put out something, there has to be accountability for it. So that was a no-no. The second big no-no was much of this is built on the internet. So where is our voice, right? So how do we even look at the voice of our network, our ecosystem? And so if we have to solve problems in our context, I think on one end, we have to bring the voice of our communities and also the knowledge of the ecosystem. Both of these have to come together. And this should be offered in a very relevant, accessible, contextual way to my ecosystem. The third is the hallucination part. I think there's a lot of debates, conversation. I think we all understand that. And we said we are doing our best to address it. I believe we have to a greater extent. But along with this, can we also make the AI more responsible? So which means that while we are mostly covered in terms of hallucination, can we still create transparency, accountability, traceability, all of that, so that the choice and the agencies with the users, so they have access to some of these resources, they can go and verify it right there, right? So if something is wrong, they can come back and we can have an engagement, we can fix the product, make it better and better. And the last one is many of these are monoliths in the sense the cost of acquisition and maintenance is so high, and we said we have to build scale-free products. So scale-free products are products which can work for the smallest organization and largest organization, but deeply rooted in the sector. So I think these were all the kind of frictions we saw in the current products, and we said I think there is an opportunity to do something. So we said let's go put it out, see what happens. That's been our journey, Smarinita.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what I think we saw most value in as well, right? That it was layered on IDR, right? So, it's not getting diluted by the larger internet where there is no veracity of sources. We spend a lot of time at IDR making sure that, we're true to the voice of the community, we're true to the contributors. So how do we make sure that when people ask questions, that kind of gets reflected, right? And the second point you said about like people can go back to the source, on IDR Answers, you can actually see where, like, if your question's been answered, you can see where the sources are from where that question's been answered. And definitely this thing about monolith, right? We don't want the world to be run by two large organizations, and we are all at their mercy. So can we build smaller pockets of, expertise that, draws from the community and gives back to the community? So, yeah, so I think that's a big thing for us. Yeah.
I was also wondering, Smarinita, from your lens, I think you broadly talked about the why and how it creates value at large, but can you segment this problem and say how does it work for a funder? How does it work for an NGO, maybe the governments, other media organizations? How do you really look at different actors coming from their context and seeking value from this platform?
Yeah. So I think for a lot of nonprofits, whether they're heads of organizations or whether, they're professionals or in their teams, it's so easy to get caught up in the problem you're working, right? So if I'm working on gender, you're putting all your energies in making sure you're running your program well, you're building your organizational well. And that there are intersections, right? There's intersection with like, agriculture or with mental health or, with livelihoods, with climate change. But like how do you kind of, who makes it simpler for you to understand some of those things, right? So I think one of the things IDR Answers does well is when you put a question, it draws all those intersections together. I think it visibilizes what intuitively but it gives you like other people's perspectives. It gives you those, it makes it very apparent, right? So when you read it, you get perspectives from, say, peers that have worked on the same space or in adjacent spaces. You learn from people who you otherwise have no exposure to, right? It kind of also expands your network. As a non-profit person, I have so much time in the day. I'm focused on serving the communities. I don't have time and energy to build my networks. So I don't know who all are operating in the space and adjacent spaces, right? So this kind of throws up some of that. I think I the I think the big thing is it breaks the echo chambers, right? In a sense, when you put you tend to, again, as funders fund certain areas, certain this, you hear from your grantee organizations, your worldview shaped by your peer group, again by this expands your universe. I think for everyone, it it expands your universe of thinking, of like knowledge, of like approaches that might be out there, how you can partner with people, how you can get the right information. um, it kind of makes it easier to kind of get information that you can act on. I think all of us, given the time constraints we have, we're always looking for stuff that makes it easier for us. We know that IDR exists and there's a bunch of knowledge there, but can it answer the question that I specifically have with respect to my context and my problem, right? So I think the ability to work across different contexts, for the engine to work across different contexts, different problems, different thematic areas. I think that's what makes it valuable in a sense. And the interesting part for the whole IDR Answers is there's a second level, right, which I think you touched upon earlier, which is the strategic analysis part. So you ask the question, it gives you this broad answer, but then you can go down and say, okay, but what are the biases that add, built into this answer? What are the assumptions that are being made? I think that is the huge. I mean, I played with it like a toy, right? As in, like, because it gives you things that you've never thought of.
Yeah.
It forces you to think differently and much more strategically. Yeah. And I think that's been valuable.
Because I think, see, many times we do things right. The question is, are we doing the right things?
Right. Yeah.
There's always a balance between efficiency and effectiveness. So where you can really go and do one thing well, but what I believe is right, does it align with the larger scheme of things? So really understanding why and connecting it with the what and how is a very important thing. That's a very, I think that's very central to how we have designed. I think maybe also what may be interesting for your users is we have two prompts. We don't have one prompt. So in Apurva, one prompt, which is the prompt to get the why, and the other prompt, what and how. And the strategic analysis and all that is kind of brings all of this together, right? So that's absolutely right.
Yeah. No, and I think you also said government, right? And I feel like because a third of IDR's content is actually stories from like the communities and the frontline teams, right? I mean, in which place will you get that voice of the community, up front, right? And for any decision maker, as a funder, as a government, officer, as a head of nonprofit deciding what to do next, I think if you can listen to the voice of the community and make sense of it, it will just, I think, transform how you take decisions about whatever aspect of work that you look at, right? And I think that is integral. And maybe you should speak. I know that we have greater plans. I mean, IDR Answers, this is the first version where we're saying we have this treasure trove. Ask the question. If it exists on IDR, it'll make sense and give you some answers. But we also have grand plans for what it's going to look like, right? So you want to speak a little bit about that as well?
Yeah. So I think, again, the core of what you said is collective wisdom.
Right.
And how do you really talk collective wisdom at scale? On one end, we said this has to be decentralized, and which is what we have done. And so we have brought all the knowledge, which is kind of the synthesized knowledge of your communities, your experts. The second is to really dematerialize. So when I say dematerialize, how do you bring voices of your communities, the literal voices? It is not voices converted into documents, into PDFs. It is, how do I enable problem solving with voices of communities? So which means, can I connect different voices and see the bigger picture? So it really triggers emotions. It really unlocks a lot of possibilities. That's on one side. The second is also language, because on the true power of AI today is it has this exponential effect on language. So what is created in one language can be consumed in many languages. And then many kinds of languages can also be brought in. So there's a massive many to many. And we're also thinking of diffusion, because on one end, we want people to come to us. How can we go to them? So people are in, say, WhatsApp. Now, again, this is one important differentiator, Smarinita. So we are saying, how do we build LLMs on WhatsApp? So if IDR's knowledge can be available to somebody in a community, or to somebody who may not necessarily come to you, can we go to them, right? So so that again is something we believe is very important. And going back to the core is, how can all of these be connected and offered in a very seamless way where it really unlocks the wisdom? And can this be contextualized to me? So which means if a funder comes in, can this knowledge be nuanced to a funder? If an expert or researcher comes, can you nuance it to a researcher? How do you make it so hyper localized, hyper contextualized, and then start creating that what do you call as flywheel of engagement? So and then that drives more quality interaction. And through all of this, what we believe is going to be super interesting is we start to build communities of practice, because you start to see who is looking at what kind of problems. We obviously are not looking at the person, but we're looking at the problem. So can we organize ecosystems around similar problems, similar needs, similar themes, and then drive very decentralized communities? Like what do you call as, I know it sounds technical, but you call this as read networks, where you have exactly what happens in, say, WhatsApp, where you have many groups. But that is so powerful, because I can get value from the larger group, but I also get value from the smaller group. So how do we really build communities at scale and in context for problem solving? That's at least the direction we are thinking, Smarinita.
Yeah, no, and I think, I mean, that's what's gotten us all like excited about it, right? Because even now today, as you use it, you see some trending, people will see trending questions, right? So you have a sense of what are others, and people always want to know what are others asking, right? So if I'm working on water security, I'd be curious to know what like my peer group is learning, what they want to know. So I think building that, like, coalescing people around themes, areas, geographies, would be amazing, right? And this thing you said about language, because finally, all of IDR's thing is to democratize access to knowledge, right? So which means it should be in the format, it should be in the language that people are most comfortable with. And I think that's the journey, we're going to take. Right now, it's English. Within, I think, a few months, we're going to make it Hindi and English, so a much larger population can access it. But over time, it is going to be like, I want to kind of understand, how agriculture has changed, in Odisha, in Odia, and maybe I'll be, able to be able to kind of learn there, right? So, yeah, the whole thing is, I think this is an engine to kind of enable greater democratization of knowledge, but also moving from just like a consuming knowledge to acting on that knowledge. And I think that's what's been most exciting for us, because again, I mean, we all know, right? We're bombarded with so much information, it's so hard to make sense of it. So if someone can do like the first level of it, it frees up our faculties to kind of think deeper, think wider, form partnerships, reach out to people we haven't reached out to, understand perspectives that we've had no access to. So yeah, that's been like, that's one of like the big things that drives us to kind of push this.
And I know very early days, day one, day two, but any feedback from the ground, because that's really what cranks the system. So what are you hearing?
Yeah, so we've been hearing amazing things, right? I mean, I've just been on like cloud nine since like we launched on Monday, because we've had so many people say they've tried it, like they've put in questions and they've been blown by it. Either people have very low expectations, or like, IDR Answers has really done a good job. But we've tested internally as well. You know this, right? We've been testing it for the last 2 months. We've done it internally, both at your end, our end. We've done it with a bunch of a few power users, and we've, a lot of the feedback has been similar, saying that, it's giving us not insight, right? It's giving us stuff that we can use. And I think that's powerful, giving you. So a lot of them have said, and so to quote someone, they said, IDR has knocked it out of the park with IDR Answers, because it actually kind of, I can use it much more, intelligently, quickly, right? I'm sure this is going to be hugely even beneficial to a lot of people who do research, right? In terms of like whether you're doing research or consulting, because the key is how do you get different perspectives, because that enhances your research, and this kind of helps you, kind of go and do that. Reach out to people you don't that are outside your networks and stuff. But a lot of the feedback has been extremely positive. But I think that's one of the reasons we're also doing this IG Live, is to kind of ask more people to use it, and tell us what works, what doesn't work. Ask questions about anything that you're grappling with, right? Like the program, like the themes that you work on, fundraising, for your own learning and development, ask questions that you want answers to. So some of the times it might not give you the answers because it's limited by the 2,500 articles and like the themes that are on IDR. But those questions are really useful for us at IDR because it tells us these are the gaps, right? So for instance, if you ask us something, around, I don't know, disability in the northeastern states, its intersection with, say, livelihoods. If we haven't covered it, we know that that's a gap, and we will go out there and cover it, right? So it's valuable for us because it makes us build a much more robust repository, and then that kind of again continues to add value. Yeah.
And also, I think the other point is, even from the product and from the ecosystem adoption, it's a journey.
Right.
This is not a destination. And one other question which we get is, I think we talked about the meta stuff. How is it different from a chat GPT and all this stuff? But and there are many products today. And I think what is really important is, how do I ensure that the core interaction, which is you're using the product, seeking the most or seeing the most value, and that is a problem worth solving, because it is really about fine-tuning and optimizing it for your audience based on the knowledge you have and the kind of interactions they have.
Right.
And how many iterations we have gone through this, sharpening this, seeing what works, and I think that's really what keeps us obsessed. And that's a space, and that is not a destination. That's something we will learn and evolve, and really want to put out something which is useful for your audience. So that's exciting for us.
Yeah, no, and I think like our team was very excited when we launched, and I was like, I think the easy part is done, though it was not easy. But like the hard part is, is like, making sure it's of value to like our users, right? How do we drive to value? How do we understand what is value, and how do we continue to build on it? And how do we kind of listen to like our audience and users, and kind of build those feedback loops for us itself? So like you're right, it's a journey, and we are very happy to be doing it with you guys, because I think we're very aligned on how we think about, like, social good, on mission, on what technology, and how do you use it for good, right? And I think this is like a huge example of how do you leverage it so that everyone benefits from it. So so it's like been great.
Amazing.
Yeah. So anything else? I think we've kind of you and I have had these conversations a long time. We just thought the world should kind of also get a little into how our thinking has been, why we're doing what we're doing and stuff. So I think this is just like a request to everyone who's like, listening, watching, that if you're curious to understand more about IDR Answers, you can just go to our website, idronline.org, and there's an IDR Answers tab on the right-hand side, on the top in teal. You can just click on it and it'll take you there, and literally ask the questions, you want, right? I think it, maybe Anand, you can talk about what questions it works well in. It actually works well for more complex questions, counterintuitively, you're like, okay, you ask simple questions, things work, but the ones that there are more, it's a much more nuanced, much more complex. I think it seems to work better for that than saying that, okay, tell me who are the funders who fund gender. It won't answer that question. So maybe you can speak to that a bit.
Yeah, no, I think so. We are getting better. In fact, the last conversations to now, the product is better, and this is an evolution. So the whole idea is, looking for intersection, and not the usual stuff. The stuff you may get, that's not the point. If you're really looking at nuanced knowledge, very complex questions, you may choose to go deep, go wide. Sometimes, again, disclaimer, sometimes it may not be right. We will love to hear those feedback. We will fix it. Some knowledge will be there. But most of the cases, you will find something super useful, right? So, and so you have the ability to really throw a wide net, see what are the possibilities using the knowledge of IDR. Then you may decide to look at we didn't talk about this, Smarinita. How do you look at all of this knowledge through, say, a lens of diversity, right? You have different forms of knowledge, right?
True,
Perspectives, lived.
true.
How can I bring that lens into problem solving? Because I think each of us have a very different vantage point. So, and many times when you bring different perspectives, that's where very interesting emergence happens. So that emergence is also something which is something which the users should start looking at. So yeah, just give it a try. We really believe this is going to be fun. Keep using it because this is a behavior change. So you'll have to keep using it. From our side, our promise is we'll make it better. The next time you come, you'll see something better. So that's the offer. So very excited.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Anand, and thanks everyone. Yeah, and hope it kind of it's of value to you all and like helps you in whatever shape and form you want it to. So thank you.
All right.
And
Thanks. Nice to catch up.
bye. Bye.
Bye.